Hello and welcome to this class that we have here today. In this case, we'll just do a quick start with HTML and CSS. Now, we won't get deep into all those different elements and all the different style attributes. I will just introduce to you everything that you sort of need to know to get started. I will show you where to find reference for these elements, for these attributes, properties, all these different things. Just a little quick start, and I would expect you to obviously be familiar with programming, and I believe if you need just to sort of do a bit of work with HTML and CSS, this isn't your day-to-day thing, but you really need to do that, this will be your best case scenario. Just take a look, get a quick start, you'll be up to speed in no time, and it will be a great shortcut for you to simply take a look at this video, take a look at how everything is done. Now, with all that said, let's jump in and let's begin with some basic HTML. Before we do anything truly fancy with our code examples, we must first take a look at the sort of traditional general structure of a HTML file, HTML page you might call it. Now, in our arrangement here, in our little lesson tutorial here, we are using Visual Studio Code. We have simple HTML files. Okay, but normally, of course, you would probably go with something like Blazor, some other kind of a arrangement, probably in Visual Studio, or maybe some other thing you would use, and it would not be exactly the same as this sort of a simple basic structure. Having said that, there are a few things that you should know about this basic structure, and we'll start looking at the basic elements of HTML. Now here, if we look at the code, we see we have example1.html. So what you do, you create this file in Visual Studio Code, then you save it as HTML, and then it will do HTML stuff for you. Okay, and then if you want to display it in a browser, you go find that file in your directory, you double click on it, and it will open in the browser as any web page would. So let's see now. We have initially HTML tags. Okay, these things are called tags. Some of them are visible, some of them are merely to maybe declare some metadata, or maybe it is to declare a bit of layout. Okay, we will get to CSS where we would see more styling options, but some of these basic tags or elements will allow you some very basic styling in terms of layout. Okay, in terms of layout. Okay, so we have here HTML. Okay, this notes that this is HTML file, and in it we have two major parts. We have the head and the body. Okay, the head and the body. Now, in the head, you basically put your metadata. You will see we'll reference style sheets later. Okay, but for now we have title. Title is applicable pretty much everywhere. Even if you use Blazor, you will probably put title here as well. And title is displayed in the browser. Okay, title is displayed in the browser on the tab. That's it. It's not displayed in the page, just on the tab itself. That's the only thing you should know in terms of what goes into the head. Okay, so references to other files that will go into here, and that's it. And the title, of course. Now the body is what gets actually displayed, what gets displayed onto that web page. And in this example, we have several simple tags or several simple elements of HTML. First of all, we have a button. The contents right here say test button. This is the text that will be displayed in the actual button. This will be a default button as it has no style, So it will look, of course, kind of old-fashioned. The next one, we have input. Okay, input. Now, input allows you to input text, but input also has several different types. We'll not look at all of them, just the most common and basic ones for now. Okay. There is also a file type that would be for file picking, but we will not get into file picking as that is more of a JavaScript thing, and it is a bit too advanced for what we're trying to do here. So we have basic input. This will be a simple text box, okay? One single line text box, okay? Now the next one is input type checkbox. This will be obviously checkbox, okay? Then we have input radio. Now input radio is a radio button. And radio buttons are sort of similar to checkboxes, but they work in groups. To declare a group in HTML, you need to apply name, okay? So we have now group 1. It is applied to 3 different input elements, input tags of type radio, right? The same name, meaning they are all in the same group. So if one of them is clicked, the other ones will be unchecked, right? And so on. This is why we have radio buttons. It's pretty much the same function as the checkbox, except for that ability to have groups. That's all that there is to it. After that, we have text area. Text area is important, okay? It is important. It is text box, but it is more advanced text box. This will not be a single line text box. This can have several lines. Okay, you can adjust styles and sizes and all those different things. But this is meant for, say, for example, user bio. Okay, or something's details. The input, for example, would be meant for a title. Okay, something that does not require a lot of text, something that can fit into one line. Text area is for multiple lines. Very simple. Okay, and when you look at JavaScript, when you look at Blazor, it is used in a very similar way. In fact, in the same way, in a sense. Finally, a very important tag element you need to know is A. Okay, A. The name for this one may seem rather meaningless and maybe a bit difficult to remember, but A is meant for a link, as you can see right here. href is the link to which it will navigate. Okay, to which it will navigate. If you set a link like this, you click on that and it will replace the existing page. Now, there are some options you can do. If we go here, we can do a little space and add another thing. We can add target. Okay, target. Now, target has several different options, but mainly you will use blank, like this. Blank. The blank will open another tab in the browser and display the contents of that link in that new tab, leaving the original one untouched. Okay, so we have all these basic elements, and of course there is a way to reference these things. You cannot learn all these things right away. There is a way to reference it. One of the places you can reference these tags is in the wfreeschools.com. Okay, it is completely free, of course, and you can find some similar arrangements over the internet, but this one seems to be the sort of biggest one, seems to be the way to go. And if you look at the list here, you'll see all kinds of different elements for HTML. You see canvas, you see code, you see all these different things. Having said that, in general, my advice would be to stick to the basic ones. If you can, stick to the basic ones, arrange them, change the style of them, but don't do something too fancy. Now then, let's get back to the code. So you now should know where to reference these elements, and you know a few of the basic ones. But you also may have noticed that each element is put into these paragraph tags, okay? Each element is inside them, except for the inputs of radio type, our radio buttons. All three of them are in one P tag. Now, P is paragraph, okay? Paragraph. So basically what this means, each and every element here will be in a new line, okay? In a new line. Although these three, since they are in one paragraph tag, they will be in one single line. Very simple, very simple. Now then, you know the elements, you know what the head is for, what the body is for, and so with that we can get into some styling. It is great to know HTML and CSS, but that alone won't get you very far. I would suggest to learn the most modern way of developing web applications, and that is the Blazor. The Blazor, which allows you to develop web applications using C# instead of JavaScript. If you are into that, take a look at my course, provided in the description. And if you still prefer JavaScript, you can take a look at the video series here on YouTube, simple and free introduction to JavaScript. With all that, APIs are always in order to develop something useful in terms of web, and I do have a course for that on manning.com. You can find the link as well. And let's jump back in. Hello again. At this point, you know a bit about HTML and where to find all those different elements for reference, and what they actually do and what they mean, and some of the basic ones as well. Now, to apply styles, to apply design to your elements, you can actually do that in the HTML. Okay, you can do that, but it is not really appropriate. You would set the style property for any element that you want your style to be set, and you would do that one by one. But that can be a waste of time, and it also makes your code difficult to read. Sometimes it's a good shortcut, but usually that is not the case. Now, to do something a bit more proper, you'll need to use CSS. Okay, that's a design language, a styling language for the HTML. So what we will do, we will create some CSS classes, and then we will apply them to the elements, HTML elements. There are other ways to do that, okay? There are other ways to do that. You can access elements ID, you can access specific elements, create a sort of a style template for the specific element or tag type, say for paragraph, and it will apply to all paragraphs. But we will look at something a bit more precise, and that is dealing with classes and assigning classes to your elements. For now, we will just do some simple styles in the HTML file itself. We will later take a look at something from outside the HTML file. Having said that, this is still CSS, okay? This is still CSS that we use for the design. In this case, we will reference the design classes to each element that the class is appropriate for, okay? Now, we put them in style tag, okay? We put them inside the style. And you can see the markup here is a bit different. It is for CSS rather than something else. Okay, we have a style CSS. If we look at this one, what we have here declared is color. Okay, color. Now color is the foreground color, basically, or for the text, color for the text, right? It is not the background color. Background color would be background color, as you can see in the test class buttons. See, background color red. Background color red, and this is color blue, and in this case we have color blue as well. Now, the example in terms of HTML is the same thing as you saw previously. Pretty much the same thing. We do not have the link. We do, however, have the checkbox and the radio buttons. Okay, we do have that. And as you can see, the button, first of all, the button has test class buttons applied. Therefore, these design attributes, these style attributes will be applied to this button. Okay, if it was removed, it would not be applied to it. Very simple. Now, the next thing is the input. Okay, the input here has test class inputs applied. Okay, test class inputs applied. So the text here will be blue, and the font size will be a bit larger than normal, that is 16 points. Okay, we use points for the font size, not pixels. Okay, this is points. And you use points in Microsoft Word and other software like that. Okay, so we have blue color and 16, and this is applied to the input. Now, this is also applied to the text area. So you see, these classes can be reused. They can be reused. Obviously, they do have to make some sense. Okay, you probably will not apply the same class to the button that you would apply to the input. That will probably not work. There are some exceptions, but those are very complex structures. You should probably stick to some more simple structures. It will be easier, and it will be easier to read. Okay, this is quite important. Stick to some simple structures and stick to some good naming structures. You see, we have here test class, and then we specify for which tag, for which element this is meant to be. For the input elements, right? We know that right away. And if you had a lot of these classes, you would simply be able to search for it. Okay, you would be able to search for it in the code. You would input inputs in the search box, and you would find your input appropriate classes. Quite simple. And then the buttons, the same thing. Now, this is a test file, an example file, so we call it test class. But you could also name this in some different way. Say, for example, login page, or say home page, or say registration page. Different names for different areas of that particular website. This is very useful, as it will make it easier to find all these different things. Okay. Now, we have color, we have font size, we have background color, we have also border. All these basic simple things. There are also margins and paddings, but you can reference all that in W3 Schools as well. Okay, so you can reference all that. You should not even attempt to remember these. There is absolutely no point. Okay, there is no point in doing that. It is quite difficult. Obviously, with experience, you will start remembering some of these, but there is no real point in attempting to do that. Okay, there is no point in doing that. It is very easy to reference. So these are the basic styles. Next, we will take a look at some more dynamic style options. In the previous example, you saw some basic implementations of CSS styles, style classes, right? Now in this case, I have simplified the code a little bit, okay? And what we will have here, we have three elements. We have button, and then both inputs, and the classes are applied as previously. Okay, as previously. Now, if we take a look at the CSS part of this, we can see that we have input style. Okay, a little comment. This is a comment in CSS. A slash, asterisk, and then asterisk slash. Very simple to make comments and indeed very useful to make them. Now, we have test class inputs the same way as we had before. Nothing has changed, but I told you previously we'll do something a bit more dynamic in this case. And that goes for the button, okay? It could go as well for the input, okay? It could go as well for the input, but in this case it's for the button. So we have test class, okay? Test class buttons. This is the main class. But then we have something quite weird in a way. We have the name for the same class, but then we have a colon and hover. Now hover, unlike the class name, this is not custom, okay? This is the event basically on which this particular style class will come into play, okay? And then another one is focus, okay? So this one, then the user hovers on the button, and then this one when the user focuses it, or in case of a button, when the user clicks it, okay? When the user clicks it, and then clicks on something else, and then it will lose focus, right? So this is focus, and this is hover. Now, this will occur and overwrite, okay? And overwrite. But, okay? This will overwrite, but you do not need to have the same things that are stated here, stated in here as well, okay? You do not need to basically restate that. One statement is enough. If you do a different value, it will override for as long as that event is valid, okay? So while the user is hovering on the button, it will be font size 12 pt. Once the user goes out of that button, doesn't hover anymore, it will get back to 15 pt. Okay, that's how it works. It overrides for only that period in which the user takes that action. That event is valid. Okay, now you can add something in addition to that. You can add something in addition to that. In this case, we add a border in addition to that, and we also set the cursor pointer, okay, so that it looks like it's a clickable button. We add those things. But again, they will disappear once the hover is no longer applicable. That is how it works. You may also notice we have color here blue and color here blue as well. This kind of a thing is not necessary. Okay, it is not necessary. We can simply remove that. Okay. It may happen quite often, and you may see this mistake being made quite often, okay? If I go back, you can see that we have color already in the initial class. Therefore, we do not need that because it is the same exact value. It does not override anything, okay? It does not override. So we will just remove that, and it will stay the same as in the original class. That is how it will work. So again, we have the class name, and then if you want to do something on that specific event, you do a colon and then find that particular event and then describe what it needs to look like on that event. We have hover, we have focus, and you have many others as well. And once again, you shouldn't remember these. It will be a waste of time. Just reference them as you go along with your code. Now, You have seen basic implementation of styles, you have seen a bit about the elements, you have seen some of these event-based styles. So we should now take a look at how you can reference a CSS file inside an HTML page, because that is the appropriate thing to do. It is great to know HTML and CSS, but that alone won't get you very far. I would suggest to learn the most modern way of developing web applications, and that is the Blazor. The Blazor, which allows you to develop web applications using C# instead of JavaScript. If you are into that, take a look at my course provided in the description. And if you still prefer JavaScript, you can take a look at the video series here on YouTube, simple and free introduction to JavaScript. With all that, APIs are always in order to develop something useful in terms of web, and I do have a course for that on manning.com. You can find the link as well. And let's jump back in. Now that you know how to create classes, establish them, assign them, it is also crucial to know how to apply a file, a separate CSS file, to a web page or to HTML file, and from there use those classes, okay? So let's go into this example, and you can see here the CSS file, the CSS file.cs, which is what we have, will be in the same folder as the HTML file. Now, there can be many arrangements. It can actually come from somewhere in some URL, okay? From a URL it can come. Many different arrangements are available. But in this example, we have what you previously saw. We have button style and input style. Then we have HTML file, okay, HTML file. And then we have those things assigned with classes assigned to the appropriate elements. Very simple indeed. The main point here, the main thing to look here at, is this link. In the head we have link, which references the style sheet, okay, the style sheet. And so the referenced file, all the classes in it, will be available for use in this particular page, in this particular HTML file. That is why we reference it. Notice we have link, then we have this rel, okay, we have rel, style sheet, this is important to note, and then href css file.cs. Now again, this could be a link, this could be a more advanced folder structure, but this is how you reference your style sheet, and this is how you apply it. Hello again for the last time now, and I do hope you enjoyed this little piece of content. I do hope it was useful, and I do hope you will check out some of my other material, all those courses, Blazor course, API course, and maybe the free JavaScript course video arrangement here on YouTube, available on other places as well. You can find the links below. And of course, do check out my other videos where I talk about computer building, choosing the right components for the right price, for the right needs, and things like that. And of course, do subscribe for more content, for more scientific and business content to come.